Hello everybody, this is our last minute review video for the country of Mexico. So let's get started. I have the map of Mexico here on the right and some of the key themes. Obviously the drug cartels all throughout Mexico present a major challenge to the government as well as to the government of the United States. If it weren't for the 2001 9/11 attacks, the President Vicente Fox and U.S. President George Bush were hoping to work together to deal with this issue, but 9/11 kind of sidetracked everything for the United States. And remember, George Bush, being from Texas, had somewhat of a relationship with the Mexican government. And then here is a picture of many students in Mexico who went missing during protests maybe about a year ago, who were later found dead. Later, I'll briefly talk to you about teachers in Mexico who have created a major obstacle to the government as well. So here we go, structure of government. Out of the 6 countries we study, Mexico has the most unequal distribution of income. The Mexican government is a federal system of government, which means that there is a government on the federal level, the national level, but as well there are governments on the state and local levels. However, this federal government is very centralized. Most of the power resides in Mexico City. There are 31 states in Mexico, and for most of the 20th century, the political party predominated all politics. Was considered more of a centrist party, but it really had total control of the country. The president is both the head of state and the head of government. The current president of Mexico is Enrique Peña Nieto. He does have cabinet members who he appoints, and they lead the various divisions within the government. There are 3 branches of government, just like the United States, and there is a division of power. President is elected by a plurality vote, and as I said, before 2000, predominated all of the elections. Even the governors were mostly from the party. And it was very difficult for states to bring in money. They relied on the federal government, so that's why corruption is so rampant throughout the nation. As far as the legislature, Mexico has a 2-house legislature, which is called bicameral. Now, the names are a little different. The Congress is called the Congress of the Union, and they have a Senate and a Chamber of Deputies. There are 500 people in the Chamber of Deputies. 300 of them are elected by plurality vote, meaning whoever gets the most votes gets that seat. But then the other 200 people are elected proportionally. So they do have like a mixture of first past the post, which means whoever gets the most votes wins, and proportional representation, which allows some smaller parties to have some seats in the government. The Senate, as we said, there are 31 states, plus we add the capital, Mexico City. They each get 3 senators, unlike ours, which we have 2 from each state. So that would give you 96. Then, recently, they changed the Constitution so that there will be an additional 32 people elected from the party lists. So whoever came in second place has an opportunity to get seats as well. So again, combination of the 2 systems. Their senators are elected for 6-year terms, and their deputies, which is the representatives for us, they are elected for 3-year terms. They recently changed this in 2014, so now they do allow these people to run for more than 1 term. It used to be a 1-term limit. So beginning in the 2018 election, deputies will be able to run for 3 terms in a row, and senators will be able to run in 2 terms in a row. Again, recent change to the Constitution, which hasn't even been implemented yet. They use proportional voting, and their elections to try to deal with fraud are now run by the Institute of Federal Elections. Hopefully there will be more legitimacy. The judiciary system has a lot of problems with corruption as well. There is a hierarchy of systems. They do have a Supreme Court which can nullify laws, judicial review, but it rarely does so. And there are courts on the state level as well as on the federal level, but everything seems to pretty much be dominated by the president, so their judiciary system does not have too much of an impact on changing laws, and because of the corruption, it's very, very difficult for them to prosecute criminals. All right, so I keep referring to this corruption, but they have this patron-client network, so a lot of times it's more who you know than it is what you know. Organized crime and the drug cartel is a major problem, and the poorest people living in the South. Remember, in the North is where there's more factories, the maquiladoras, which is right here. There are a lot of these factories that are being developed on the northern border. Also, as far as that drug cartel, try to remember that there's even like a whole industry to help people to make it across the border, although I'm not sure, given the American economy today, if that's still as much of a factor. But they do try to help people and give them materials on how to hide and survive in the desert as they get across the border. Okay, political parties. 3 political parties in Mexico. The more conservative party is PAN. This is more Catholics and Northerners. Big business, and they follow more of a laissez-faire, which is similar to the Conservative Party in the United States. PRI is the more moderate, the more powerful one, but really the one that's been mostly corrupt. And then you have PERD, which is the more liberal group. That's more in southern and central Mexico, looking for more social reforms, try to expand welfare, social justice, more similar to the Liberal Party in the United States today. Unions would be more associated and connected with PRI because that's how they would get the jobs. Even the media gets benefits from PRI to try to keep the criticism away from the people. Now, economic liberalization. Remember, liberalization means more laissez-faire, more hands-off economic policies. NAFTA is the big one, North American Free Trade Agreement, no tariffs when you cross into Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. A lot of American businesses have been moving down to Mexico, but I don't think it's had the impact on the Mexican economy as they had hoped. More privatization of banks, not being run by the government, and the maquiladores, these factories that are on the border. Examples of political liberalization. Political. This is a big one. For a very, very long time, they refused to allow priests to vote in the elections. This changed around, I believe, 1991, but I'd have to look that up again. But that makes a big difference. Obviously, the Catholic Church was restricted for a very, very long time. They have proportional representation, as I said before, and another more recent change, women. The law now says that candidates for all of the positions must be at least 40% female. Another big change. Doesn't mean that 40% have to be elected, but they have to be on the ballot, 40% of them. Okay, their electoral system, as I said, it's a combination of first past the post and proportional representation. They do have government funding for their elections, so they don't have the same problems that we've sometimes run into. They recently changed the number of Senate seats, doubled it from 64 to 128. One party is only allowed to hold 60% of the seats, and their party threshold is 2%. If you get 2%, you can get a seat in the Chamber of Deputies. So this has all led to the decline in power of PRI recently. Although the current president, Enrique Peña Nieto, is from PRI, so that is obviously, they have come back into power. Because of this, institution of federal elections has been greater transparency in the Mexican government. As far as globalization, remember, globalization is the interconnectedness of global economies throughout the world. So how have they responded to this? NAFTA is a prime example of the privatization and the neoliberalist policies of more laissez-faire. And these maquiladoras, please try to remember that, these factories that are on the border trying to employ people in a more private realm. How have citizens responded? Okay, this would be a good one to know. Their system has, educationally, they've suffered tremendously. And they've tried to make teachers take tests, content area tests, for them to get their permanent certification and to keep their jobs. Teachers have protested violently, mostly from the south. I think the one area is Oaxaca, and it has created a major conflict between the government, which is really trying to wrestle control of the schools, and the teachers' unions, who refuse to give in. I do find it ironic that teachers don't want to take tests themselves. And it is one of the largest unions in the country. Politically, how have their rights increased more recently? Competitive elections have expanded, less corruption, less fraud in the elections. This is a big one. It used to be that the president would select the next candidate to run for office. That is no longer the case. And public campaign financing, people don't need to raise money. How have their civil rights increased? There's been a greater emphasis on gay rights. Civil unions are now legal in Mexico City. Greater freedom of the press. And a social and agrarian reform movement, the Zapatistas. This is a revolutionary group, a very leftist, ultra-liberal group that's trying to promote some elements of socialism into the economy, and they have had some level of success. Migration, since more of the poor people live in the rural and southern areas, the migration tends to be from the south to the north and from rural to urban areas. NAFTA has created, hopefully, some more jobs, as well as the maquiladoras on the northern border. Impact PRI has been weakened throughout the country, but unfortunately there's also been more urban unrest. Mexico does support business, but they still have not been successful in curtailing poverty. And then they do have ethnic conflicts in Mexico as well. The indigenous people from Mexico versus mixed race people, the mestizos. And the Zapatistas did stage a rebellion about 20 years ago in the southernmost area of Mexico, Chiapas, which is, I believe, on the border of Guatemala. And it just shows that there is still a conflict there with some people who would hope to break away from Mexico. All right, good luck, everybody, and I will see you soon.